Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome back to the Good Wine Zone. Today, the Good Wine Zone episode is entitled Deere versus Tesla. So let's get right into it. Deere versus Tesla. What we have is the front skid plate to Fiona, the red 2022 Model 3. Let's get up here and talk about it just a little bit. The red Tesla Model 3 is a 2022, which is fantastic. The 2021 has a fiberboard skid plate. Fiberboard, if you remember as a kid when you were 16 and you had speakers in the back deck of your car, of your Camaro if you were rich, or of your Escort if you were like me, although I don't think we had a back deck in the Escort. Anyway, that material is fiberboard. If it gets wet, it's gonna tear up. That's in the 2021. Fortunately, Tesla listened to their customers and in 2022 changed that skid plate to a good hard plastic. Yet, this is what a Deere will do to it. The Deere had antlers. I think I've told the story. I couldn't avoid it. I ran over the thing. He was already dead. Antler broke off on one side. And this is what's left of the skid plate. This is the front of the vehicle. So we went over it, boom, like this. There are 4 attachment points at the front. 2 of them were totally ripped off. This one, well, that was hanging by a thread. This one was ripped off of the bolt on the inside, or plastic on the inside of this attachment was ripped off. You can see it's busted all the way here and even up here. But it did its job, so that's awesome. We're going to switch to the other video where I have installed an aluminum one that I bought from Amazon, a company called Losar, L-O-S-A-R. It fit perfectly. You use original hardware except for a couple of different type of fasteners that go here. So we'll be switching back and forth and show you that. But Deere versus Tesla, and Tesla won. It's still busted. Oh, and the other fun thing in front. So this is under the car like so. In front of the skid plate is the front splash guard, which is under the bumper. And the interesting thing, that also was damaged, but we're still going to be able to use it. But a lot of these broken pieces ended up inside of that splash guard. So they were rattling around in there. But what we're going to do, we're going to pause. We're going to put you under the car and show you the finished product, how well designed the replacement is. And I will tell you, it was so easy. I did it by myself with only ramps, regular ramps, and I fit up under there enough to do it. You only needed a 15 mil socket and a 10 mil socket. Oh, and a T15, which is also, I don't know how many millimeters hex head. You need that too. I think I identify that in the installation video. So anyway, hang on, let's look at that. And then we're going to show you Dina's rear. I'm going to go ahead and replace the rear of the 2021 because, like I said, it's fiberboard. And here's the thing. So underneath this front skid plate on the rear drive Tesla Model 3 is nothing. High up in there are some steering components, but directly above the skid plate is a void where the front motor drive would be. So if you're driving a dual drive or a dual motor or performance Model 3, then yes, this did its job and would have protected the motor. An aluminum one will give it more protection, I believe. But the biggest point I'm making, if you have 21 or back or previous, you don't have much protection. You only have that fiberboard. If you're driving a dual motor and you have a motor up front, or obviously there's a motor in the back underneath the fiberboard, and we're going to show you that. Let me tell you, this was $360 for a set of front and back. That's cheap, folks. Cheap insurance. In fact, I would say that if not the best thing you can do to your Tesla, that's the second best behind paint protection film. Stay tuned. We had a problem last night on the way home. I was driving Fiona. We were in 4 lanes. I was in the right lane, traveling traveling lane of 2 lanes in one direction, going about 55, and came upon a dead deer in my lane. A car was to the left of me, a curb to the right. I had no place to go. So I tried to slow down, but the only thing I could do is to try to straddle the deer, which was a buck. And so I ran over him. Of course, Fiona is very low to the ground, and it did not sound good. So let's take a look. There, so I have it taped up, and you can see here, and I'm sorry for the goriness, but this is the front skid plate, and I will show it to you better when I get it on the ramps, because you really can't see the part of the steering mechanism, and I wish I knew the name that's exposed. But what I did last night when I stopped, this skid plate, or is that part of the splash guard, was hanging down, and it would drag on the ground when I was driving. So I had to put this piece of duct tape to hold it up. Normally you don't see that bar. The skid plate and the splash guard come together. I guess the splash guard covers that bar. The skid plate starts where that bolt is. So let's get her up on the ramp, see what we got. It appears that we have Fiona safely up on some ramps. We have Fiona's parking brake engaged here. So this is the splash guard. The skid plate and splash guard share these bolts, so that is not a big deal, because I don't see any damage to anything other than the plastic. Plastic broke here. Praise the Lord, I think everything is fine. I don't see any liquid that has escaped anywhere except for this red stuff. I think we are going to be great. So the deer, he hit, this got pushed up. You can see this comes down. Some bolts here. This skid plate will come off, which I'm going to order a new aluminum skid plate. I'm pretty excited about that. So this is on eBay for about 160 bucks. This is a lot more expensive depending on which one you buy, but that's okay. We'll be adding some weight to that, but it's okay too. I don't see anything bad in here. I'm excited about it. Let's get everything cleaned up. Mostly I was concerned about this, which this appears to be. So let's pop this splash guard off and get her cleaned up. Or should I leave it on and get her cleaned up? I think I'm going to take it off. All right, the good news is it has warmed up a bit and we've traded hats. SeaWorld Rescue. I've done my part to help the animals. The other good news is Fiona appears to be fine. It appears to just be the plastic front bumper splash guard that has broken, and it's only broken at one bolt point, and the skid plate is completely gone, but the skid plate appears to have done its job. So I'm going to take this opportunity to replace that skid plate with not an OEM plastic skid plate, but with some type of aluminum. So I'll do some research and we'll come back when we're ready to replace that. That'll make for a good video. The bad news is as I was under there cleaning things up, which was quite the job, deer fat and tallow does not like to come off easily, especially when you've let it sit overnight. So it was more than just getting under there with a hose, and with the skid plate, the way it was fractured, I mean, stuff was everywhere and in nooks and crannies and cuts, and so it was quite the job. But we got it mostly cleaned up. I think when I take the skid plate off, we'll discover more areas that possibly need cleaning. I'm not going to take it off today because I can drive the car with a little duct tape, actually Gorilla tape, extra wide Gorilla tape. I've got the skid plate taped up and the splash guard taped up, and it's drivable. The little bit of bad news, and hopefully it's not too bad, while I was under there cleaning, I noticed that on the sides of the rear skid plate, there is also some evidence that we have run over a deer.